Time travel. Time travel.
Well, hello everyone. This week, we will travel back in time 20 years to 2005 and discuss Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Now, you may ask, why are we doing this? It's not something we normally do on this channel. Well, several reasons. One, the movie was re-released for its 20th anniversary this past weekend. It's expected to make $30 million, making it the highest grossing re-release of all time. But for me, the most important reason was that my son wanted to see this in the theaters. He had seen it in the past, but he was only 3 when this came out, so I thought it would be kind of cool to be able to see this movie with him. Now, there can be no denying that the Star Wars franchise it's not exactly in a good place. There hasn't been a new movie in several years. The sequel trilogy was incredibly divisive, particularly the last 2 movies. They're not exactly beloved. The Star Wars shows that are streaming on Disney Plus, with the exception of The Mandalorian, they suck. They're pretty poorly received, poor quality. And honestly, because of this, the prequel trilogy, which was a bit divisive itself, has had a bit of a revival with people. They're looking back a little bit more fondly on it. So, as I ask every week, what do we have here? Is Revenge of the Sith a movie that wasn't appreciated as much in its time, but is actually a really good movie? Or are we just considering it good because of all the bad stuff that has come out over the past several years with Star Wars? Well, before we answer that, let's talk a little bit about the plot to Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
But first, let's have a chat.
It has been 3 years since the Clone Wars began. Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi and Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker rescue Chancellor Palpatine from General Grievous, the commander of the droid army. But Grievous escapes. Suspicions are raised within the Jedi Council concerning Palpatine, with whom Anakin has formed a bond and a friendship. When Anakin is asked to spy on the Chancellor, bitterness comes to the surface, and Anakin begins to embrace the dark side, out of fear for his wife Padaway and their unborn children, and Palpatine preys on these and manipulates him. And as Palpatine attempts to destroy the Jedi and take full control, Anakin's wife and his best friend Obi-Wan Kenobi desperately try to pull him back from the dark side. But is it too late? So what works in this film? I have to say that the special effects, they hold up for the most part. It's 20 years ago they made this film. And some of the effects, they're a little wonky at times, but for the most part, it looks, pretty well done. Especially some of your fight scenes, your space battles, and the planet of the Wookiees, that's always been my favorite. That looks like a really well done set piece. I think acting is pretty strong for the most part. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen give strong performances as Obi-Wan and Anakin. Especially Christensen. Anakin is a flawed and torn man. He loves his wife, he loves his friend, but because of his fear and his jealousy, he is easily seduced. And in this manipulation, Christensen does a great job portraying it. You can see the conflict in him. And of course, Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu, he's fantastic, but Jackson's great in everything. I'd be remiss if I didn't discuss the final confrontation as well between Anakin and Obi-Wan. And we've seen a lot of lightsaber battles throughout the Star Wars movies and TV shows, and without question, this one is the strongest. You can feel the desperation from both men. It's one of the most iconic scenes in the franchise. And I get it, it's mostly CG, but still, it's just so well done. Also, I always like the final battle between Palpatine and Yoda. That's pretty cool. I remember seeing it for the first time, thinking how amazing it looked. This Yoda, this little green creature, it's pretty badass. The final scenes of this movie, the revelation of the creation of Darth Vader, especially that scene where the mask comes onto his face, there's silence, and then you hear the iconic breathing. Man, no one's ever gonna forget that. I know I won't, and I don't think anybody who saw it will either.
A powerful Sith you will become.
What doesn't work in this film, and I think the biggest problem with the prequel trilogy itself, is the acting is good for the most part, but the overall script is pretty weak. Some of the dialogue is just very clunky, and it just goes on a bit too long. And that leads to our next problem, the pacing of this film. It's either a ton of stuff happening or nothing is happening. It's scenes of great action followed by scenes of excessively long dialogue. And finally, look, I like Natalie Portman. I think she's a pretty solid actress. But she's just very flat in this film. I don't know, maybe it's the script. It doesn't help her. But she herself, it's just not her strongest performance. And I never thought she had much screen chemistry with Hayden Christensen. Look, when I first saw this film, I liked it a lot. But I didn't love it. I did think it was the strongest of the prequel trilogy. 20 years later, my thoughts have not changed. It's a good movie. It's a really good movie at times. It has some amazing and iconic scenes, franchise-changing scenes. And it's the darkest film since Empire Strikes Back. In fact, I would argue it's even darker and sadder than that one. But it is a bit slow. It is a bit poorly paced, and it does have some very, very clunky dialogue. But even with its flaws, I think it holds up pretty good. 20 years later, I still think it's a very good, not great movie. It reminds us all of what Star Wars could be and should be, but sadly isn't anymore.
That's so sad.
Well, that's all I got for this week. Tune in next week where I give you my thoughts and feelings on whatever I've seen. In the meantime, click that like button, subscribe, leave a comment or a question, share this video with friends and enemies alike, and as always, thank you for giving me your valuable time, and I'll see you next week. May the Force be with you.
Obi-Wan, may the Force be with you.